Welcome to Session Sunday. Hi guys, it's Jack Edwards and today's session is focusing around defensive cohesion. But before we get into this week's video, make sure to give us a like and subscribe, and if you missed last week's video, click on the link above. Okay, so moving into the first part of this week's session, we're going to be looking at our first small-sided game-based drill. But before we get into it, let's have a look at how many players we've got and the equipment that we'll be using this week. So in terms of players, we've got 13 players, including a goalkeeper. So 12 outfield players plus our keeper. If you don't have a goalkeeper, you can just use a coach or a parent or yourself if you don't have another coach to go in goal. But then you can obviously provide information to the defensive team that you're going to be working with. But obviously if you do have a goalkeeper, that'd be great. And then outfield players, if you do have more or less, you just adapt the teams to have however many players. So right now with the defensive team, it's going to be underloaded. So obviously you have more players, you want to do the same again, making sure they're underloaded just by one player each time. So the equipment that we're going to be using this week, balls, bibs and cones, and then if you don't have small-sided goals, you can use poles, and again if you don't have a bigger goal as well, you can use poles again. In terms of the setup for the first part of this week's session, okay, we're going to be going 40 yards of depth and 30 yards of width, with our small-sided goals just placed just off the corners on each side here. And then we're going to have cones in the middle, okay, for our midfielders and our fullbacks. So again, as if the fullbacks here, they're going to be again just off the end of the pitch here, and again in the middle of the pitch, just off the end. So we're going to have 7 greens to start and 5 blues. So we're looking for defensive cohesion between the back 4 and the central midfielder. Okay, so it's always going to be a 5v4 scenario in favour of the defensive team. Okay, but obviously we have got our 7 attackers, but 3 attackers. There's only ever 2 on each side going here from the fullback and the midfielder, and the fullback and the midfielder. So how it's going to work is the attackers are looking to receive or dribble through the wide areas to then go and score. So what we're trying to do is get across as a team to prevent the space, to try and win the ball back when we can, to then try and win the ball back and go through the small-sided goals, so score as quick as we can. So the coach will play into one of the midfielders. The midfielder who receives it must then receive the ball and take it out through the 2 cones, okay? So let's go through this side, okay, so you can see better. And then that means that this fullback comes into play, which means the 2 players on this side have to wait here until that centre midfielder receives the ball, okay? So then we'll have a 5v4 scenario. So we'll have the fullback and the centre midfielder and the midfielder, sorry, it's a 5v5 scenario. So you always have the front 3 attacking, okay, so this player is obviously going to try and get across, and you have the 2 players further back attacking. So then what we're looking for then is if they play out to the fullback, we're looking to provide pressure, okay, to stop them playing through, with our defensive midfielder always providing support to stop balls going in, so obviously the striker's feet, try and intercept it into the wingers. So obviously we're trying to restrict that space, okay, force them going side to side, so then it could come back into this centre midfielder here. Obviously the fullback's allowed to move freely. If they play it into the other centre midfielder, then these 2 players are locked back, okay, into their starter cone, and they're going to try and attack the other side, which means this fullback becomes live. So again, they're trying to attack the space, so we're trying to get up and defend. So we don't really want to drop below here, okay, because then obviously it gives the attackers the opportunity to attack into the wide areas. So we're trying to keep a high line, okay, force them into mistakes, okay, into areas where we can try and win the ball and get bodies round, trying to win it back and then play through. The coach will then start again with the ball. We'll get back into our positions, our front 3, our back 4, with our midfielder in front, and then the coach will play in again. Okay, so the emphasis again is trying to contain the attackers, stop them receiving the ball in wide areas to attack. If they do get the ball, and they do get the ball through here, then us as a team have to react, okay, and get back behind the ball to obviously stop any crosses coming in, defend in wide areas, and if we win it back in here, then there's space for us to counter-attack in and then trying to score quickly. So as if we played into the centre midfielder and then we're playing the ball through into midfield. We will now move into our first animation before moving on to part 2 of this week's session. Now moving into part 2 of this week's session, we're now moving into our second small-sided game. Okay, this time it's going to be focusing on our midfield 3 and our front 3. Okay, trying to win the ball back, or trying to stop balls getting played forward. Okay, so we're going to be setting up with the greens having their back 4. Okay, setting positions to start. Obviously, they can move forward and back and come inside, but we kind of want them to stretch the pitch so it's difficult for our six blues to try and win the ball back. Okay, they're going to have 2 players in 2 end zones here. Okay, who can swap over every few minutes, and they're going to have the goalkeeper as an extra player as well, who's obviously we want them to be confident with the ball at their feet. And then what we're looking to do is win the ball back, counter-attack quickly. Okay, so we're looking for that defensive cohesion, okay, to contain and restrict the space, okay, force them into areas where we can try and force them to play forward balls where we can win the ball. Okay, so obviously we want our front 3 to be pressing the centre-backs and the goalkeeper, with the 3 players in behind putting pressure on the full-backs with the wingers, okay, to prevent balls through into here. So what we're looking for is the players in here to try and not be playing, you know, passes over the top into these players. If it's on, if we've given them too much pressure, that's fair enough, okay, you can do it, but we don't want them just opening out and then they've got no time on the ball and they're just trying to play aimless passes. Okay, we want these to try and stretch the attackers in here to make them work hard to win the ball back. Okay, so the ball's going to start with the goalkeeper. They can even bring the ball out themselves, and obviously we want these players here to create space. The setup is the exact same, so 40 yards of depth, 30 yards of width, with just a small box in here, 3x3 for them to receive the ball in if they do get it. So then obviously they're looking to play out, instantly we're looking to put pressure on it. Okay, so obviously we want the winger to come out here, okay, and stop balls going down the line. We want our midfielder to support, okay, we also want our striker, okay. So with the striker, it can be, can he block passes back into the goalkeeper, okay, with then support from our midfielders across here, okay. So we want to put pressure on the ball, so obviously we want our winger to come in with the body angle of, this winger's not going to get it, so we're going to come around here, we're going to force them back inside, which means if the centre-back then travels in, the striker can put pressure on, the winger can come across, we've got our midfielders, okay, so it leaves it, there's nowhere for them to go. And then if the goalkeeper then gets the ball, if we anticipate it well, the winger can come across, the striker can put pressure on, and we have our midfielders backing us up, okay, and then put pressure on the goalkeeper. So we're trying to force errors, okay, in that defensive, in that, you know, attacking third, okay, to try and win the ball back, okay, high up the pitch, to then look to penetrate and score quickly, okay. If the Greens somehow do manoeuvre and play the ball wide and then play it forward, that's a goal for them, okay. Once they've received it there, it will go straight back again from the goalkeeper. So obviously we need to work as a unit, both as a midfield 3 and a front 3, okay, to win the ball back. Obviously, if you set up in a different formation yourself, you might, you know, play a 4-4-2, so you might have, you know, your midfield 4 and your 2 strikers, okay, so how are you going to stop it then? Your 2 strikers, one of them can press the centre-back, or 2 of them can press the centre-backs with support from the wingers, okay, or you can have maybe a 2 pivot midfield with a number 10 in front, your wide players and your striker. So then if your striker goes and presses one centre-back, you can have the other one backing up, okay, so then if the ball gets played across, they can support. So obviously different formations, you can set up different ways to try and win the ball, but the emphasis is again trying to frustrate the defenders, okay, trying to contain them, restrict the space, force them into areas to win the ball back high up the pitch. We will now move into our next animation before moving on to this week's 4-corner model. Now taking a look at this week's 4-corner model, starting off with technical and tactical, we're looking at our angles and distances, okay, so we don't want the players to be too close, okay, to opposition players, and we don't want them to be too far away, okay, obviously because we want to try and stop them from passing the ball to a certain area, okay, but we don't want to then overcompensate and leave too much space, okay, so obviously we want them to get close to a player, but we want to be able to know that we can drop off and get ourselves back into position, okay, so when they're closing somebody down, knowing that, get their arm out so they're always an arm's length away, not getting too close, okay, because then obviously it's easy for the opposition players to turn, and then same again when we're going to press. And then we're looking at our compactness, okay, so preventing space, Okay, so obviously in the first couple of drills that we're doing, we're trying to, in the first part of the session, we're trying to prevent space out wide. Okay, so staying compact, shuffling across and sliding across as a unit. Okay, having that cohesion to stay connected at all times, and obviously our compactness when we're doing the pressing as well, to make sure that there's no gaps for the opposition to play through. And then finally covering ground quickly. Okay, so getting across to the ball quickly. Okay, so then we're covering those gaps, restricting that space. Okay, so making sure we're relaying it onto the players that they've got to move quickly, okay, to get in position to then frustrate the opposition and contain them at all times. And then moving into our psychological corner, looking at anticipation. Okay, so when we're trying to press the ball, we've got to anticipate where it might go. Okay, so anticipate the ball coming from the centre back to the goalkeeper to the right centre back. So as a left winger, okay, when that ball's travelling, can we anticipate where the ball might go? Okay, get a little extra edge on our yards. Okay, to then force the opposition into errors. Okay, so anticipate, you know, where someone's touch might go. Okay, where the next pass might be. Okay, but then obviously we need to back it up as a unit. Then looking at our concentration and focus. Okay, so always making sure we're always looking at scanning our surroundings. Okay, making sure that we're talking to each other. Okay, always concentrating on what's ahead of us. Okay, where the space is to the side and behind us. Okay, so don't lose that focus. So obviously if a pass goes through, or you know, someone gets the ball in an area where we don't want it to, making sure that we adapt to it. Okay, and we focus and we just remember what we're trying to do. And then finally, our awareness, okay, so our positional awareness, okay, and our spatial awareness, so being aware of what's around us, what's ahead of us, and then our positional awareness, okay, not being too close to an opposition player, not being too far away, okay, and when the ball's on one side, knowing exactly where we should be, when it's central, what area of the pitch we're trying to defend, when it goes wide, what area of the pitch we're trying to defend. So as a coach, you've got to tell the players, okay, what parts of the pitch they need to be defending in. In terms of our physical corner, we're looking at our strength. Okay, so strength and power to win the ball back. You've got to be stronger than the opposition. We've got to use our arms, okay, to, you know, feel our way into winning tackles. Okay, so getting those shoulders out, okay, getting those arms out, okay, to be physical against the opposition, to make them uncomfortable. Our ABCs, so being able to turn quickly. Okay, so if somebody's running at us with the ball, or the ball's changed direction, making sure that, you know, we're able to change from left to right, forward to back quickly, okay, to adapt to different scenarios where the ball's going. And then finally, that looks at our body shape. Okay, so obviously if the ball's on the right side and with the left centre midfielder, we don't want to be facing the right centre back. Okay, we want to be having our body shape, knowing that we can see where the right back is, we can see where the right centre back is, and we can see where the ball is as well. So as the ball travels and adapts, okay, we've got that chance to go, okay, I know exactly where the right centre back is going to be. So then I know, there's my awareness, okay, there's the concentration, and then the anticipation can come in to try and win the ball, but it all starts from our body shape as well. And then finally, our social corner. It's massive this week about communication. Okay, so players in behind, so our midfielders, our centre backs, have got to give information to obviously our forwards and midfielders of, you know, a player's on your right shoulder, on your left shoulder. Okay, telling players to go press to the right, press to the left, press up, and they're getting players in nice and tight. And then the players who are further forward, okay, communicating to get players to support the press. Okay, so on our pressing triggers, obviously, you know, a bad touch, a mistake, a long pass, okay. Always, you know, what we're looking for is that bad first touch, but we've got to force the opposition into that with our pressure as well. Again, so working as a unit, okay, it can't just be one person going to press. We've got to back our teammates up. So it's relaying that onto the players again. If we can't just go as one, when one person goes, we all go as a team. So then we're looking at that encouragement and that support. Okay, so making sure that we're making the players feel that, you know, what they're doing is for a reason. So they're trying to win the ball back. There's a purpose to it. Okay, so moving into part 3 of this week's session, we're moving into our third small-sided game. Okay, so this time when you progress it, all right, you're going to take out certain areas, but for now we're trying to get a lot of success on the defensive side. Okay, so players on the attacking zones are going to be locked into certain zones. Okay, so our setup is going to be 45 yards of depth. Okay, you can maybe go a little bit more, okay, and do 50 yards if you really want to. We're going to go 40 yards of width. Okay, so essentially we're going to have 20 yards of width and then 10 yards either side, and then our depth is going to be, so from the start here to our first line here is going to be 20 yards, and then we're going to have an extra 15 yards from here to our next line, and then the end here, the end zone here is just going to be 10 yards, okay, for the players to try and pass the ball through. So the aim for the Greens, who are going to be the attacking team, is to work the ball out, okay, to try and get it into a player who can pass the ball into one of the small-sided goals. Okay, so we're trying to restrict that from happening whilst also trying to press the ball at the same time. So as the Greens, the players in the middle are locked into the middle zones. Okay, so you've got 2 middle zones. the players in the wide areas are locked into the 2 wide zones. The centre backs can maybe come in here to receive the ball. Not too concerned about that, okay, but want them to try and stretch the pitch, okay, so it's harder for the Blues, but if they can come in here if they really need to. And obviously they've got the goalkeeper as well, who will start with the play. So what we're looking for from the Blues is working as a unit, supporting each other to try and win the ball back and scoring a goal. Okay, so it's going to start with the goalkeeper with the ball. They might come out and play over here. So then as the Blues, what we're looking for is, can we support the press? Okay, so obviously we always want to use our striker, okay, as that extra man, okay, to then, if someone gets the ball, can they maybe force the ball going into the goalkeeper? Can they force it going into an area where we can win the ball? So they're cutting passing lanes off, and then we get that support from the midfield. So it could be, again, our 2-man midfield, okay, with 1 in front, or it could be a 1-hold midfielder with 2 in front. So obviously then we want from these wide midfielders is to try and prevent passes into the wingers whilst also supporting the play. So it's again our body shape, okay? Because if we're just standing straight on in here, okay, preventing passes into here, then it's easier, okay, for the fullback to get the ball. Whereas if we come in here and we're showing passes inside, okay, we can then get support from the opposite side, okay, and we're saying to them, go and force that long pass. If they can play that there under pressure, it's good going, but we can still, when the ball's travelling, okay, get bodies around the ball, okay, from the opposite side, okay, to slow them down and then get more support from there. Okay, so what we're looking for again is to force the opposition into areas who obviously they're looking trying to get the ball and play through. If that happens, it starts from the goalkeeper, but we're trying to get the ball in here to put pressure on, okay, moving as a unit. Okay, so then obviously these are locked into their zone, so they're trying to create space. If the ball then transfers over, okay, again, so we want that back up there. So the right winger and the right centre midfielder should never be on the same line, okay? Because if this right centre midfielder is here, okay, they're stopping balls into here, okay? The winger can press in there and also stopping balls into midfield. Because then if somebody comes short in here, okay, we've got our other midfielders to help support. So then if the ball does come in here, yeah, we can corner them into an area to win the ball back, and then we're looking to break quickly. So when we do win the ball back, we're looking to break quickly, okay? Be decisive and clinical in that final third. So again, all the things we spoke about our angles and distances, okay? So not being too close to a player, not being too far away, our compactness, okay? Covering that ground quickly. Everything that we're doing, seeing in the 4-corner model, it's got to be put into each practice, okay? So when we win the ball back, being decisive without it, being patient, closing the gaps, okay? Frustrating the opposition, and then looking to win the ball back to score. We will now move into our third animation before moving on to the final part of this week's session. Now moving into the final part of this week's session, we're now moving into our final small-sided game scenario. So again, same as part 3, you're going to start off with the players locked into the zones, and then you can progress it, okay, to then take them out. So then obviously it's down to the players to remember their positioning, okay, without the zones being there, so it becomes a bit harder. So how the attacking team is going to be split, okay, they're going to have 3 in this zone here, and then 3 in the end zone, so they'll have their overload in there, whilst our defenders will have our overload in here. In terms of the setup, we're going 45 yards depth again, so 20 yards from here to the first line, and then our middle zone is going to be 15 yards, and we're going to have 10 yards in here. So these are going to move the ball quickly, but they're under no pressure, okay, so there's plenty of space for them to move about. And we're going to go 30 yards of width with 2 small-sided goals at the end. So what we're looking for is our midfield unit, okay, to stay compact with our defenders, okay, also helping them out by with the gap being quite close in behind here. So the Greens are trying to manoeuvre the ball to play into the attackers. An attacker can come short, but once the ball's been played in here, they can't play back. Okay, so they're obviously trying to find half space in between. If they do get that, they instantly got to attack and make it a 3v2. So none of the 4 defenders in here can go into the final third. It becomes a 3v2. So then our defenders have got to react quickly and try and win the ball back. Obviously they have the goalkeeper, so we're trying to restrict space. So when the ball's travelling out, okay, our nearest man will be highest. Okay, so when the ball travels to the left, it'll be our right back with support from the whole 4. Obviously our 2 defenders below that, we're looking to them. Again, our defensive cohesion, okay, because if they stay central, we get players moving out left, okay, and players dropping in. It's going to be a lot easier for them to get the ball through. Whereas if we're closing them gaps, okay, so you've got the right back and the right midfielder and the centre midfielder, with the centre back in behind there, okay, we're closing them gaps off. And again, closing the gaps in here, so we're defending one side of the pitch together. If the ball's central, okay, we've got maybe a player dropping in, we're looking for them again to be in here. With our full-backs in nice and tight, we might have players dropping in, but obviously if the ball is central, we're looking for one of our midfielders, so if they're trying to take it across this way, this player will step high with our right back and our midfielders, okay, dropping into form that triangle round with our other player. And again, we've got our support from our centre back behind. Players might drop in, so that if they do try and play a ball, we can try and intercept, and then we're trying to score quickly. So then front four, okay, that midfield four, are then going to try and burst out, okay, to create a bit of space for players to run into, and we're looking to play into the small sided goal, where the coach will then start to play again, get into our shape and prevent it in here. So obviously if the ball goes in here, they've then got to instantly attack, but obviously we're trying for them to play through into that final third. Okay, so our goal for our defenders is to stop them attackers getting the ball. If they do get it, can we react quickly as our two defenders to win the ball back? And if they do get it in the midfield third, can we get bodies around the ball to win it and then go and break quickly? So then how we will progress it is we take out the middle zones, okay, take all of this out, okay, and it'll just be a 6v6, okay, but we're still trying to keep our shape. So it might be that they're trying to, we can drop into more of a back four with a midfield two in front, okay, you might have two players in here, you might have one, a 4 and a 5, and then you might have one player roaming spare, okay, putting pressure on the ball, and you have our defenders behind that. So, you know, they might have a front three in here, you might have two midfielders and one high. So then what we're looking for is this player here to put pressure, okay, to close out one side of the pitch with our midfielder providing support. And then when the ball switches, it might be that this midfielder steps up, we have the other midfielder dropping in, okay, we're getting ourselves across. So if they do try and attack the other side, okay, we can put pressure on the ball, okay, we can step up as a unit, try and intercept to look to score in the small sided goals. We will now move into our final animation before concluding this week's session. Thanks for watching this week's video. For more content, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and TikTok. The links will be in the description below, and we'll see you next week for another Session Sunday.